Hey everyone, welcome back to our another video on our learning series. In our past two videos, we saw more about technical skills where we discussed about Excel and SQL. But this time we thought of doing something on a non-tech skill and how that is important in a business analyst or a data analyst role. So here in this video, we are going to discuss, or I'm going to ask Santosh more about how effective communication is important in data analytics job, and not just that, but also about how mathematics or combining or balancing mathematics with your English skill to have an efficient communication with the stakeholders, and what are the options to learn or improvise your learning skills in that field. So let's start with the first question, Santosh. Why it is effective or crucial to have an efficient communication skill while being an analyst or while being a data scientist?
It's a good question. So, as an analyst, right, people usually think like we just do numbers, we just do query, we just do code and give out the data to the stakeholders. But in the real job, what happens is, as an analyst, you should be able to effectively communicate and present the data that you have just seen. You're not a data mongering machine, but more or less like you should be able to present and come to an understanding of what you have did, what is the output, what does the data say, and you have to translate it in such a way from a data language to a stakeholder language, in making sure the person, he or she who raised the request, understands what's the outcome is. So that's why communication is very effective for an analyst.
Okay. So when you said this, you also mentioned that data analysts are not just a data mongering machine, but from outside, it kind of looks like that. Data analysts are someone who just provides you with the data, but how mathematics or the analytics is contributing in your communication, or it could be a day-to-day communication, or how important it is to slowly transition from mathematics into a properly phrased sentences.
So again, whatever we're discussing, right? As an analyst, you're completely right. What I said is we are not data mongering machines. We have the responsibility. That is an additional responsibility. Even if you go to a job search for an analyst, business analyst, data analyst, there is something called as should be able to story tell, should be able to visualize data, should be able to present the data. The storytelling, visualization, presenting, everything ties back to numbers, right? So yes, English helps us in effective communication, understanding insights and everything. But maths is the very backbone of analytics, and you need to understand math, and you should be able to talk in math when you're explaining a stakeholder about, let's say, an analytics, let's say a predictive analytics that you're presenting, or let's say you're focusing on something of complex equation. You should know how to ingress, or you should know how to marry English and math in order to effectively present it. So that's how important mathematics.
Okay, maybe just for our audience to understand it a little bit in a better way, can you give an example of from your real life scenario or some hypothetical scenario?
Mm, An example like it's a day-on-day work, right? When we present numbers and we get the data, you can say one of the examples can be in an interview. You'll be asked to present a case study, and in that case study, it will be like mostly they would have already solved it. They will have the numbers. They will have everything handy. Your role is to effectively walk them down from the start of the problem till the end result. And obviously, the end result and everything would have came from a complex mathematical equations, right? And how I usually effectively present is I keep in mind that I'm teaching it to a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old about this complex supply chain problem. I start them with the basic English, telling them what is what, how it is done, and then I try to pitch in a little bit of math, like what kind of model that we did. Is it a regression model? If it's a regression model, what are the coefficients? And that's how, as an example of how you can say a math around an English.
Maybe just taking a point further into it. How would you have a balance between English and math? Because as analysts, you are more inclined towards math than English. I mean, by English, I'm not just pointing out one particular language, but whatever the language that you use to communicate. In this world right now, it happens to be the business language is English. So, how would you strike a balance between math and English to have effective communication?
So you have to put in the shoes of whom you're telling the data, right? If you're telling it to the manager, or if you're telling it to the salesperson, or if you're telling it to someone who's a junior, who just recently joined. So what I do is, as a mental model, I try to step into the shoe of whom am I presenting it to, and it affects how I'm going to present, right? So if I'm going to present it to a director, it will be a heavy, like it will strike a 50-50 math and English. But if I'm talking to an analyst, fellow analyst, or a junior analyst, it will be more about the math rather than about the code or how it is going to be present. So it completely depends on whom you're going to present it to. You just have to do the due diligence of understanding who's the audience of this demo or of this presentation. And you have to prepare the balance beforehand and come into the presentation.
Okay, since you touched about whom you're going to present, what if it is someone who is completely non-technical? Let's say that you have to convey some really complex mathematical equations or really complex mathematical models that you have just prepared, but you want to convey it or explain it to someone who has completely illiterate in these kind of concepts. Let's say some really big stakeholder, probably some big manager, director of the firm or something, but you want to convey this message. It is because it's really crucial to explain the models, so you can't just skip it, saying that, hey, it's all quantum physics like they do in Hollywood. But how would you do it to a non-tech stakeholder? How would you convey everything?
See, the key process of all doing this is the stakeholder should understand what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, the more complex the math is, the more complex it is going to be for me to explain it to them. But one good thing about all the stakeholders who are like managers who are coming from IIMs and IITs, or let's say any tier 1 college, the one good thing about them is they will be able to observe the numbers faster if it's in the form of a visualization. That is something I have learned personally. So even if it's a complex math, even if it's a complex regression model, anything it might be, I try to come up with a visualization to tell them, hey, and also use their experience. Like in case I have worked with them or in the past, if they have worked with on similar model, I'll be able to tell them in the form of visualizations and metaphors and let them understand as much as possible with less jargons. The end goal is to make sure not to intimidate them to get them intimidated with the data. It should be more like a free-flowing conversation using mostly charts which they are comfortable with. So I would say if it's a person who does not understand the math much, it's okay. But try to understand what he knows better. If visualization is his forte, go with the visualization, which will definitely help in the process.
Okay, that's definitely a good idea. So since our audience are mostly someone who's trying to get into data analytics field, what would you tell them, or how should they improve their communication skills? Let's say that the people are already working on their communication skills, since it's important in pretty much any field. But when it comes to getting into data science field, it's not just about talking in the flow, but also more about talking the right content in the right way to the right audience. So how should someone improve or learn their way into the data analytics using the communication skill?
So one of the things that I see the freshers whom I'm interviewing for the last few weeks is they are really good in English. 2018, when we passed out, I would say out of 100 people, at least 40 or 50 will know how to talk English well. But now it's in 2022, 2023, I'm seeing that number has risen up by at least 20-30%, right? And but what they're missing is they're overseeing the use of max in speaking. I would say they're not able to tie up numbers, they're not able to tie up the analytic jargons, they're not able to present the data in a more mathematical way, which is unfortunately expected from an analyst. You might not know how to code, it's fine, but you should be able to sell stuff. You should be able to talk in numbers. You should be able to present yourself as an analyst. And how you're going to present yourself as an analyst is by presenting the numbers, right? So what I would definitely tell them is focus on newspapers, especially the finance section part, because finance sections are written in such a way that they are presentable to CEOs, business people, or managers and stuff. So if you read the newspapers, you'll be able to understand, okay, this is how I should tie up English and math. That is very important. So I would say, as a fresher, if I'm starting in the field of analytics, I would genuinely visit some English newspapers, especially the finance section, and try to understand how they are writing the articles and stuff, because they put time and effort when they're writing this, because they know the audience is some people who are like very good in math, who are the CEOs, CFOs of a big industry and organization. So definitely visit the finance newspapers and especially the sections which they write about company's performance and
That's a very good point. But just out of slightly out of that finance topic, I just want to ask you if that makes sense. Since we are ahead of a Cricket World Cup, which is going to be hosted by India, how would it help for an analyst if they follow the commentaries or the storytelling from there? Because as you know, cricket involves a giant amount of data analytics and data presentation, even by all the TV channels, but even outside that, they are doing it. So how would it help if you just follow the cricket analytics from the newspapers, of course, from the newspapers, also from the TV channels? Do you think that will be more helpful, or is it more of just storytelling but not data crunching?
so you have to stand in the shoes of a reporter or whomsoever is going to write that article, right? Let's say 100 people buys your newspaper. You know that finance section will be focused by only 10 or 12 people, right?
Got it.
That's a 12% ratio of who's going to focus on that section. Any genuine sports lover will not go through a finance section, and any genuine finance section lover will not go through the sports section. That's highly improbable. So when I'm writing for a 12 people out of my 100 subset, right? And I know this 12 people, their average salary or whatever that they're going to draw in will be higher than any other section readers. Reason being, the one who's going to be reading the finance will be either a middle-aged man who's successful in business, or a business who's ready to invest his money in stock. And before investing his money in stock, they want to read through the paper, try to understand if the company is performing, yes or no. And a very good indicator is, you see ads placed in a newspaper, you'll see the high value ads, like for an Audi or for any high value ads, it will be placed in finance section and not in sports section. So when a writer is focusing on a finance section, he'll be giving his 100% to make sure that the math, the jargons, the words are crisp and effectively written as possible. But whereas a person who's writing for a sports section, he will not care about data, he will not care about the jargons. What he needs is he needs to bring the spice up so that people continue reading it. So that's a very clear indicator why finance section is chosen more than a sports section. And of course, it's up to the person who's reading it. But I would say finance section covers more data and jargons than the sports section.
Oh, got it. Okay. So thank you very much, Santosh, for answering all these questions. I hope our audience got the message. In following the pattern, we discussed about Excel and then SQL. Now we touch base on communication skills. So following in this pathway, our next stop would be something on critical thinking. So stay tuned with us, guys. Soon we are going to release a video about critical thinking and the importance of it and how you can improve your critical thinking to get into this field. And until then, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye.